he has this amazing, it's not a sermon, it was a lecture he gave at a college of women on the imagination. It's one of his most important things, the imagination, its function and its culture. And he says, and he's giving this to educators, but obviously it's to parents as well. He says, it is not necessary that everyone should be a poet. It's not necessary that everyone should have such big emotions like a poet. And not only that, but be able to articulate them so well. And he says, but it is necessary that all must feel. And this is part of his charge to educators. Like, we need to create a space in which people are allowed to feel, because without feelings, we can't find God, he says. So I think I think what he's most distressed about in Federal Calvinism is this dampening down of the emotions, the trampling of it, and that our theology, he's not saying we have to be led by our emotions, but he's saying our theology has to make space for good emotions. And if our emotions say something to us, we need to listen to it, because maybe our theology is wrong. And that's why kids are always the most intuitive people in his novels. And he says that when he was a child, he remembers crying for 2 days when he heard that there were people that were going to hell. And he couldn't believe that his elders were not bothered by this. And he says, then he remembers thinking to himself, it would be far better to have no God at all than to have a God who was okay with people going to hell. This is his heart. This is his earliest heart as a child. Then he grows up in the Church of Scotland, learns the catechism. I should read you this thing about the catechism. The catechism is a great example of how Scottish kids were educated into the faith, but I think there's a lot about it that's similar to how sometimes we educate not only kids, but adults in the faith. And so he went through all of that, and then he had a crisis of faith in college. And he remembers these long nights. Again, this is imitated a bit in Robert Falconer, but he remembers these long nights of walking on the beach. Just, is there a God? If there is a God, is he good? If he's not good, should I believe in him? Maybe it'd be better to believe in the devil. He's like, well, if we don't have a good God, then why would I believe? Or if he's only good to some, and I'm one of those privileged few, that doesn't seem good either. So he said, through the mist of this time, I had to push through with courage and with reading his Bible to get through to the other side, to this God that he suddenly realized God and Jesus are one. They're not different. And when we have any church that says God is one kind of God, and then Jesus is kind of his best foot forward, that's when we need to sit up and go, okay, there's not only doctrinal misalignment here, but then it's going to require an emotional misalignment within me. I found this great. This is a quote about the catechism. This is from Alec Forbes of How Glen. And I think there's something really interesting about this, because MacDonald said that the way that kids were educated in the faith growing up began to damage their imagination and damage their love of the word. And he said, that's the problem of what's happening. It's their emotions are being turned against God and against scripture. So let me read this to you. He says, the joy of the half holiday for Scotch boys and girls has a terrible weight laid in the opposite scale. I mean, the other half of the day. So I think Fridays maybe were half days of school. Okay, don't quote me on this, but this I'm trying to interpret. I think there was something about they got out of school. They were so excited to get out of school for a half day, but there was a weight put on the other half. The weight, which brings the day pretty much on a level with all other days, consists in a free use of the shorter catechism. This, of course, made them hate the catechism. So I think they had to use the catechism for their day off or their half day. He said, of course, this would make them hate the catechism, though I am not aware that was of any great consequence. For my part, I wish the spiritual engineers who constructed the catechism had, after laying the grandest foundation stone that truth could afford them. The grandest foundation stone is, what is the true end of man? It is to glorify God by enjoying him forever. He says, I wish that having laid this grand stone, they had glorified God by going no further. I love it. Certainly, many a man would have enjoyed him sooner if it had not been for their work. But alas, the catechism was not enough, even of the kind. So they were so afraid that kids wouldn't believe the right thing, or that they wouldn't glorify. they wouldn't understand what it meant to glorify God. They had to expound it and spell it out. And he says, it gets even worse. He says, it was not enough. The tormentors of youth had gone further and provided what they called scripture proofs of the various assertions of the catechism, a support of which it stood greatly in need. Alas, I say, for the boys and girls who had to learn these proofs, called texts of scripture, but too frequently only morsels, torn bleeding and shapeless from the lovely form of the virgin truth. For these tasks, combined with the pains and penalties which accompanied failure, taught them to dislike the Bible as well as the catechism. And that was a matter of altogether different import. So he's saying, first of all, they made it so heavy. They gave it weight, TMI, and they put it on their half day of what's supposed to be like their holiday, and they're held inside. They have to do this. And then worse, they're given these bad, taken out of context Bible verses that the kids had to learn. And then at the end, they hate not only the catechism, but they hate the Bible. And he says, this is a grave matter of terrible weight. And I think that explains how we, out of fear, try and teach our kids the Bible, give our kids rules. We want them so much. And it's not just our kids. It's what we do with our congregations too. We give them, this is what it looks like to be a Christian. And glorifying God, it becomes not about glorifying God by enjoying him forever. It becomes fearing to do a misstep. It becomes being scared of it's what you were talking about, Leah. It's scared of doing the wrong thing. And this is where MacDonald believes the role of the imagination, or at least I think the role of the imagination for Christians is vital to help us break out of this kind of fearful way of appropriating and disseminating truth to something much more experiential, and where we're given tastes that lead people to the next taste and the next taste and the next delight.